Happy October, everybody. I wish I could go out into social gatherings of more than 6 people and compare costumes, but our government hates poor people having fun. So, what am I supposed to do to get into the Halloween mood? Well, watch some horror movies, of course, but that feels too simple. I decided to dig a little deeper and make it a horror movie marathon with movies from Japan. There's a lot of Japanese horror I haven't seen yet, so I wanted to watch what was considered classics. I was planning to do the whole video lit like this, but it wasn't going to work out, so we'll just have to deal with the lighting as is. As I was gathering my watch list, I noticed something very intriguing. Most of these J-horror movies had American remakes. I can now compare what each culture finds scary. As always, some context. I will be covering 5 J-horror movies that have American remakes. When these were made, Japan was going through a cultural shift. Technology was making big advancements, and it was affecting people in the country socially. These films try to express this fear of outside forces breaking down family structures by using technology or vengeful spirits. I'm not an expert, but I will try my best to explain the cultural differences. Now time to go back to the spookiest year of all, 2002. So, the original Ring came out in 1998 and is pronounced in Japanese Ringu. I will be calling it Ringu to not get it mixed up with the American remake, and pretty much every American critic calls it that anyway. You may not have seen it, but its premise has become iconically known in the horror community. A reporter investigates a mysterious videotape that, if watched, you will receive a phone call saying you will die in 7 days. This movie was a huge hit internationally, and a copy of it, funnily enough, on VHS tape was sent to Gore Verbinski. Verbinski was still early in his career, but is a pretty well-respected director for the variety of his work. Verbinski is important to mention, because with this being the first J-horror remake, I need to stress one thing. He had a vision. Like The Ring or not, he tackled the material in his own unique way. There is a reason Hollywood used the success of Verbinski's Ring to greenlight more of these remakes. Having seen both now, I can now say with complete confidence that both are pretty equally good. I can see if you were a diehard fan of Ringu why you wouldn't like The Ring. The big difference I think anyone would notice is budget. Ring had over 20 times the money Ringu had. I know some would say the less clean aesthetic makes Ringu scarier, but this didn't affect my experience. Ringu doesn't look great, and Ring is green. Not in love with either look, so really no strong opinion on this. When it comes to technical things, I think The Ring used editing much more effectively and the music also feels more appropriate. The hard thing about comparing these two is that on paper, they are nearly identical. They both follow the exact same plot beats and nothing major is changed in this aspect. 2 teenage girls hang out, but one is killed because they watched the tape. Single mom reporter related to the girl that died investigates the tape. She watches the tape and is cursed. She teams up with her ex, who also watches the tape.
Roll credits. That was very student film.
Her child watches a copy of the tape. They find out the tape is cursed by a ghost who was abused and killed by a parental figure, thus making them a vengeful spirit. They find the well she drowned in and put her to rest. Ex-boyfriend is still killed by the ghost. Reporter realizes you can pass the curse on to someone else to save yourself, so she gets ready to save her son. I will say The Ring is almost 30 minutes longer than Ringu, and almost all of it is dedicated to adding more creepy shit plaguing the main character. It may seem like fluff, but honestly it kind of helped. My major gripe with Ringu is I felt that it heavily dragged in the middle. These scenes in Ring helped keep my attention and added to the creepy atmosphere, so these additions weren't detrimental in any way. In Ringu's favor, I will say it's more subtle than The Ring. Like Ring more explicitly tries to explore themes about technology and motherhood. I am not going to say that it is terrible, because what is tough about Ringu and The Ring is these differences become much louder when you are actively comparing them. Like there's the scene where the reporter lady is just looking at an apartment building nearby and you see a mother flipping on a TV and leaving her daughter. You might think that is not subtle at all if you are thinking about Ringu, but when you just watch Ring you go,
how neat is that? That's pretty neat.
I think both explore their themes pretty well, but you may get different mileage out of it depending on your cultural knowledge. The best way to examine this is to compare the final 15 minutes of both films. After over an hour, the audience finally gets to the moment they have been waiting for, the grand reveal of the creepy TV ghost girl, Sadako in Ringu and Samara in The Ring. As stated before, Ringu is worse looking due to the time it came out and budget. There is, however, strong, creepy visuals used to make up for this fact, and the actress that plays Sadako uses precise movements to make it scarier. Also this. Take that as you will. Ring has Samara, who is actually played by a little girl and uses more details like water coming out of the TV and a static filter being placed on Samara. Maybe the stripped down version is scarier to you, but to me, I was much more terrified by the Ring. It might be a cultural thing, but it's just my opinion. The last thing to compare is the actual endings. Like I said, both protagonists gain the knowledge that showing a person a copy of the tape will redirect the curse. In Ringu, it is heavily implied the reporter is going to have her own father watch it, thus killing him instead of her son.
お父さん、今からそっちに行くから。お願いがあるの。陽一のためな。
What adds to the creepiness is it seems that she is asking him as a favor, so he knows what it means to watch the tape. Japanese culture is centered on family, so this might unnerve Japanese viewers more, sacrificing your own father so a new generation can take over. You can also examine that they're killing him with soon-to-be outdated technology. The Ring changes this by having a short scene where she makes the tape and the son asks,
"What about the person we show it to?"
She stares blankly, not knowing how to answer, and the movie ends. This creates a more broad sense of dread than personal. She might show this tape to a random stranger, and that random stranger could be you. American horror was really obsessed with trying to ground their movies. What made this scary to people was, what if I watched the tape? The DVD of The Ring even has the tape as a special feature, and once it is done, the DVD menu would play a ringing phone. Both endings are good and creepy, but they were both constructed with two different types of audiences in mind. Look, there are some scenes I like better in Ringu, and there are others I like in The Ring. I wouldn't say either is a masterpiece or anything, but both are pretty good horror movies. You can't go wrong with either, but if I had to pick, I would pick The Ring. Again, maybe it's my Western brain talking, but the presentation appealed to me more. Not the best way to start saying I prefer the remake, but it is what it is. The Ring was a huge hit, so Hollywood saw the effort Verbinski put into it and said, is there any other Ghost Girl J horror movies? There are a lot of Ju-on films, and from what I can tell, this series is very confusing. Ju-on The Grudge came out in 2002, but was preceded by 2 direct-to-DVD movies. This series is all over the place, but each is simple to understand, kind of. I said this series was confusing. All follow the same premise. A woman named Kayako is brutally murdered along with her son by her jealous husband. If you enter the house she was killed in, her and her son will haunt you, then kill you. Ju-on is not a perfect film. The story is non-linear for reasons I still have yet to figure out. However, I will say this movie is terrifying. Everything about this film is unnerving. This curse is scarier than The Ring to me because there is no weird loophole. You can't stop it. You enter this house, you will die. I don't agree with the non-linear structure, but it does allow the director to show off as many set pieces as he can within the film's runtime. This was the first film in a long time to genuinely creep me out. This movie was a decent hit, and having been released a little before The Ring made it a prime candidate for a remake. What hack did they get to direct this? The same director as the original. I'm not sure why this decision was made. Maybe the studio was unconfident in getting the feel down. So with it being the same guy, it can't be that bad, right?
It's pretty bad.
I get the feeling that there were a lot of hands in this that limited the original director. For example, the scares of this movie are mostly directly adapted from Ju-on, but have been morphed to have a more jump scare-like quality to them. It cheapens all these terrifying scenes from the original. All the scary parts from this movie range from almost as good as the first time to awful. Everything about The Grudge is just so derivative compared to Ju-on. Like The Ring, The Grudge had a higher budget than what it was based on, but the money was put into all the wrong places. Ju-on looked cheap, but it almost gave it this amateur grounded feel that made it more creepy. One of the best things about the movie is the contrast between the colorful outside world and the darkness of Kayako's house. It gives it a sense of mystery and dread that is so important for a film like this. The Grudge was definitely shot on better cameras, but the whole film is gray and shot so flatly. There is nothing interesting to look at visually in a movie where visuals are the most important thing. You also need strong actors so we can feel fear with them. Japanese acting is a lot more expressive, so the original has great reactions to the scares. The American ones feel so ungenuine, which makes it harder as a viewer to feel scared. Speaking of the characters, one of the most probable studio mandates was all the main characters needed to be white. That is not surprising, but in a weird turn of events, the movie is still set in Japan and the ghosts are still Japanese. It creates a very uncomfortable subtext. Part of what makes Ju-on scary is the idea of a home being unsafe. A place of comfort has become a curse of death. By making all the characters in The Grudge white, it removes this as they are all visitors who are there for work reasons.
Konnichiwa. Watashi wa Karen. Anata wa?
It also pushes this idea of other cultures are scary because you are watching Americans be killed by Japanese ghosts. That's what you get for trying to educate yourself on other people's cultures. The only changes this movie makes is that it cuts some of the other victims to streamline the plot to surround Sarah Michelle Gellar. This really messes with the pacing because now you have to deal with more plot, which is neither of these movies' strong suits. This movie was bad, but having rode on the success of The Ring, it was successful. This opened the floodgates for Hollywood to demand more J-horror remakes. But as they churned out more of these, the effort got low. The original Dark Water came out in 2002 and was directed by the same guy who did Ringu. This is the best movie I watched for this video. While it is scary, what makes the movie work is that it is also a good drama. The story follows a mother who is fighting for custody of her daughter. To help her case, they move into a crappy apartment building to establish a steady home life. The big issue is that a giant leak is forming on her ceiling. The apartment above her won't answer her, and the building managers avoid it. And of course, there is also a ghost girl that ties into all of this. The last two films' main issues is that when there wasn't scary stuff happening, it was kind of boring. Dark Water makes every scene feel purposeful, as it helps us feel the same anxiety our main character is feeling. To tie the horror of a situation to a character conflict seems simple, but Dark Water is the first one to do it so far. While I made this video to examine cultural differences, Dark Water is just universally good. Maybe it is just subtle, but there is no cultural hurdles to be fully invested in this movie. So, the American remake should theoretically have the easiest job in adaptation. There's not much that needs to be changed for it to be good, and somehow they managed to fuck it up gloriously.
Bitch. I hate you.
Watching the American remake was the most fun I had making this video. All the subtlety and nuance is thrown right out the window. Some of the best scenes in the original is the divorce hearing scenes. They are so tense as the mother is just constantly questioned about her sanity. Her husband obviously isn't perfect, but he feels like a human being. The divorce scenes in the remake have the husband and mother just yell at each other.
Only you. Okay. You see, she's crazy. You live in a world of your own. I make one mistake and I don't care about Ceci. You're insane. You're insane.
The director needs everything to be as obvious as possible. The daughter needs to point out that they are moving to the bad part of the city, because how will the audience know otherwise?
Mommy, that's not the city.
They even have some random guy just chip in his 2 cents.
No, that's the city over there. That's not the city.
She's right.
The original builds stress with very realistic situations, while in the American one, everybody is just like really mean. The only new stuff added is more cheap-ass jump scares. They add all these unnecessary elements to make it scarier. The water is black. There are creepy teenagers in the building. The little girl sings Itsy Bitsy Spider. The director probably thought this was clever because the song says water spout. So along with these exaggerated elements, you get terrible performances across the board. Every actor gives way too much or too little. There is no in between. It undermines some really powerful moments from the original, making them comedic. The original has a very unique conclusion. Long story short, the ghost girl in this died in the building's water tank because of a neglectful mother. The ghost girl is trying to get rid of the main character's daughter so she will be her new mom. At the climax, the mother gives into the stress and embraces the ghost girl, showing her compassion. This saves her daughter, but damns her to take care of the ghost girl. The movie has a time skip where the older daughter returns and has a touching conversation with her mother. They both part in peace, as the mother only cared about protecting her daughter, which she did. It is bittersweet. The remake ends similarly, but of course it is more dramatic. The remake removes the time skip and has this odd scene where the daughter's trapped in the elevator and the mom braids her hair. It is just so silly and strips away any sort of emotional investment. I honestly recommend both of these. One is a great horror movie, and the other is a great comedy. Dark Water is the beginning of a very sharp decline in these movies, with the next two killing the craze just as it was starting. Both Pulse movies are built on the same premise. Ghosts are killing people through the internet. The original theorizes that the afterlife is full and they are finding their way back to the living. There's a lot of interesting concepts in the movie, like this ghost invasion actually causes a sort of apocalypse, as the rate people die is out of control. Pulse explores the sadly true concept that the growth of the internet would actually separate people, not bring them together. The main theme of this film is loneliness. The ghosts do not actually kill their victims, but remind them that even in death, you are alone, causing them to commit suicide or eventually fade into dust. This movie has a lot of unique ideas, with some very unique, creepy ghosts. I just wish it was a tad more subtle and had more scary scenes. I got bored a lot during this movie as these characters didn't do a lot for me. It lacked any emotional stakes, but was effective enough with what it was trying to do. Even with all my complaints about the original, I did like it more after having to sit through its terrible remake. 2006's Pulse is embarrassing. The cast is filled with actors you kind of recognize, and they all suck in this. They somehow got Octavia Spencer to show up for a kind of racist scene.
Girl, you better get out of my face. I'm calling the police.
Why don't I call the police?
All right, don't get crazy.
The American remake feels more dated than the original, surprisingly. The original had the benefit of the internet still being newer, but by 2006, this was way too silly. It is not surprising that they added a bunch of jump scares. What is surprising is the changes they made to the story and characters. In the original, the ghosts appearing essentially depressed people to the point of suicide, but in the remake, they legitimately suck your will to live. Kind of removes the point, huh? The first person to die in the original is a friend and co-worker of the main character. She goes to visit him as he has been uncommunicative for a while. He seems oddly chipper before going to a back room where she finds he has hung himself. The remake has this too, but changes the co-worker to be the main character's on and off boyfriend, because American writers think women can't be motivated to do anything if it doesn't involve romance. As his will to live has been sucked, he's all drowsy and creepy. Funny detail they added was he hangs himself with an Ethernet cord. Do you get it? The internet is scary. The other big change was the remake felt the need to explain the ghosts by making it the result of a virus that opened frequencies never seen before.
It was a telecom project! It was my baby. It was super wideband. We found frequencies that we didn't even know existed, man.
It is really dumb and did not need explaining. What was interesting about the remake was the concept that the ghost could be defeated with an antivirus flash drive plot device. It does work, but the systems reboot. The remake ends as the main characters enter a dead zone, seemingly safe from future ghost attacks. The original ends on a very powerful note as the main character watches her companion turn to dust, making her feel truly alone. Why does America adapt these movies if they aren't going to commit to the themes that make them resonate? The Ring is the reason they made all of these, and it committed to the bleak parts of Ringu. But for some reason, Pulse just goes, make it green like The Ring. That's why it was a success. Green like money. Now I finally approached the last of these localizations. This one is the genre killer. There were more J-horror remakes after this, but this one stooped so low that even Hollywood executives said, maybe we should stop. One Missed Call's ghosts haunt cell phones. The Japanese original is not that good. It feels like it was ripping off the previous movies but forgot to actually make commentary on something. You get a call and there's a message of you dying. It is revealed to be some evil child who is haunting cell phones, but I'm not entirely sure why. All the other ghosts had like a reason why they were haunting people a certain way, but this one just attacked whoever and their backstory has nothing to do with phones. It is just kind of messy and not scary at all. No horror movie should end on a song like this. So the remake should be able to outmatch the original easily enough, and yet it still manages to be the worst one. This is the genre killer. Everything about this is bad. The title font is the same as those old Don't Pirate movie ads. The acting is bad. They add hallucination scares, but they are bad. They make them feel like Final Destination deaths, which if you are ripping off Final Destination, you are off on the wrong foot. Look, there just isn't much to say about either of these. These feel like the end of the line. Hollywood has run out of really beloved J-horror to remake that isn't fucking weird as shit. There were half-hearted attempts after this, even trying to pull from Korea, but the craze was officially over. What started with a director with vision ends on a whimper known as One Missed Call. Since I didn't have a lot to say about this one, I thought it would be fun to put together a little How to Remake J-Horror for Americans guide, now that I'm an expert. Step 1. Pick a J-horror with ghosts and copy all of its plot points even if it doesn't make sense in a different cultural context. Streamline plot and simplify if need be. Step 2. Make sure the ending isn't too grim. Maybe they kind of seemingly defeat the ghost, but suggest it can still get them. Step 3. Cast a pretty white lady. Not a no-name, but maybe like a TV actor with a few film credits. Step 4. Make sure every side character is as annoying and useless as possible so we don't feel bad when they die. Step 5. If you have kids in the movie, and this is crucial, make sure they can't act.
We've got rainbows.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Step 6. Don't let audiences be bored. Add more scares. At least one every 5 minutes, even if it has nothing to do with ghosts. Step 7. If it isn't scary, just add a loud sound in post. Now it's scary. Step 8. Color correct it to be as dreary as possible, just in case the audience didn't know it was supposed to be scary. Step 9. Release it, and hope for profit. And that is the weird period of American J-horror. I'm glad that we are finally past the point where we feel the need to remake great foreign films just for American audiences. Or did we? Have a happy, hopefully indoor Halloween, everybody.